the Army Corps of Engineers mobilizing more than 1,000 specialists to clear the wreckage of the bridge collapse in the port of Baltimore.
The NTSB says it could take up to 2 years to complete its investigation into the deadly crash, but they're expected to release a preliminary report within 2 to 4 weeks. So joining us this morning with more insight into the investigation is maritime historian Sal Mercogliano. So good morning, Sal. Thanks for being with us. Appreciate it.
Good morning.
So we're learning more about what exactly was on the ship. And the NTSB says that there was actually hazardous materials on board, which is now leaking into the water. Any word on what was exactly inside those containers? And who's responsible for cleaning that up?
Yeah, well, we're not hearing details specifically what's in it. Not unusual for a ship to be carrying hazardous material. It could be anything from medical waste to oil. So they will endeavor to keep that isolated. They have put a containment boom around the vessel, and they're working right now to stabilize it. Unfortunately, they can't get on the forward part of the ship because the bridge is lying on it. The cleanup will be initially done by, supervised by the Coast Guard, tasking units to do it. Overall, this is going to be a very complicated liability issue that we can talk about.
Yeah, I want to talk about the ship itself, this Dali cargo ship, right? It underwent a routine maintenance inspection before heading out early Tuesday morning. It was cleared for travel after that inspection. Can you tell us a little bit more about those inspections, what go into them? Because this was almost instantly that it pulled out that there was an issue.
Yeah, so these ships, this is a foreign flag vessel, Singapore flag. In September, that ship came into New York. And matter of fact, the New York Coast Guard did a safety inspection on it, and it passed with no deficiencies.
Yeah.
So we rely on the ships, the companies, and a whole series of organizations to ensure ships are ready to go. Before that ship would have sailed, they would have undergone a series of checks. And when the ship's pilots, these were two Maryland pilots, came on board, they would have been basically assured by the master that everything was in operating conditions. But this is what the NTSB is investigating now.
But they have looked over information from the ship's data recorders from previous safety inspections, and now they're finding out that there were previous problems, though, on board this cargo ship and a previous crash. What do you make of that?
Yeah, the incidents, previous ones, did not seem very minor. I mean, I looked at them. There were some incidents of keeping up with some material. The ship has been involved in some collisions. This is really going to go to the overall operating status of the company that oversees the ships. Most of the crews rotate on these ships within a few months, so you don't get the same personnel on board. But it does go to a corporate how's their tradition? What do they do? What's their standard operating procedures?
Yeah, who's operating these ships?
I'm interested in your take on the timeline, right? It was released last night from the National Transportation Safety Board. What exactly happened here? 1:24, the alarms go off. 1:26, the pilot calls for Mayday help. 1:27, he drops an anchor. 1:27:30 in the morning, he calls that Mayday, and then at 1:29, it hits the bridge. It's a span of 5 minutes. In that 5-minute time frame, what exactly is happening on board?
Well, as a former mariner, I can tell you the worst sound you've ever heard on a ship is dead silence, because that means nothing is working. And, 5 minutes doesn't sound like a lot of time, but this would have been stretched out. It would have been elongated. At the same time, it would have gone by in a second. It's hard to explain, but it's like a slow motion accident taking place. The pilot on board did a fantastic job. They alerted NTSB, they alerted everybody involved, the Maryland DOT, everybody got involved. So we saw Coast Guard coming in. They tried to stop the vessel with the anchor, but the problem is once you lose power, you're on board a 1,000-foot ship, 100,000 tons, moving at 10 miles an hour. There's no way to really control it. We see the lights come back on. That's them attempting to try to get power back on so they can steer the ship with the rudder. But we saw the power fail twice in this endeavor.
Yeah, I mean, there's also concerns about the bridge, right? The structural integrity of the Francis Scott Key Bridge and its design. Were there any upgrades made to the bridge prior to this?
Well, the Port of Baltimore just expanded, so we've seen the harbor get dredged. We saw new cranes brought into Baltimore, and we saw a lot of infrastructure improvement, but not to the bridge. Citizens in New York will remember, the Bayonne Bridge having to be raised to allow these new ships in. But one of the things that's not being done is really looking at our maritime infrastructure to shore. That bridge was built at a time when a ship like the Dali would have been unheard of. No one would have thought of a ship this big coming in. And I have to tell you that, as a ship right now, Dali is not a big ship. It's about a medium-sized container ship. There are ships twice as big as Dali sailing out there. And we need to really relook at the safety features of our bridges and other maritime infrastructure.
Meaning, I know we got to go, that whole metal part right? That's all connected. So one piece comes down, and there's no fail-safe. The whole thing then comes down. Because I mean, I'm not a structural engineer, but that's a way that a bridge can be built differently, so that if it's something were hit, only a piece comes down, right?
Right, but there's other issues you can do. You can put barriers around the bases of the bridge, and so you can basically create it so you can't hit that bridge by putting these concrete or land barriers. The problem with that is what you start to do then is you close and you minimize the size of the channel.
Yeah.
So there's always this trade-off that happens. But 99.99% of the time we have ships going onto bridges and there's no incidents at all.
Right.
This is just literally, had this happened a minute earlier, a minute later, we probably would not be talking about it, and that bridge would still be standing.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, we appreciate your insight this morning. I wish we could talk to you longer. Hopefully we can have you back on the show in a future date. Thanks, Sal. Appreciate it.
Pleasure to be with you all.